Welcome to Reading and Writing Between the Lines, a podcast series about communication skills in the workplace. I'm your host, John Witzman. Join me as I speak with industry professionals and Conestoga faculty and alumni to explore their journeys with reading and writing skills. Follow us as we talk about how communications learning has changed over the years, how these skills are used in a wide range of industries, and the future of workplace communications. As you've moved from, different media and now onto sort of web design, what are some of those sort of core principles that guide you in your work as you're trying to communicate content, whatever it might be?
Well, I think, because I'm not a creative writer, and that's more about expressing what you want to express.
Right.
I think that's the goal of creative writing. I've always been sort of focused on audience, right? Who's reading this and why are we writing it? So
Yes.
we need to tailor it for that purpose. And I think that sort of informs sort of writer for hire type people and editors. I've spent most of my career as an editor more than a writer.
This is actually tremendously relevant to our COM 1085 students who might be listening, because the concepts of audience and purpose are fundamental to that course and many other communications courses in our school as well have at their core a consideration for what we might call the rhetorical situation in some cases. So what are some of the things that you do to consider that audience? What are some of the factors or characteristics that you're trying to anticipate, and how maybe you can give us some examples of how you might tailor a message to one audience profile as opposed to another?
Well, I think because I've worked most of my career in educational publishing. Before I started working as an instructional designer here, my main client base and employers were always education context. So leveled writing is an important part of that.
Right.
Which is, what grade level are you writing at?
Yes.
Or what, who is your target audience in terms of, like, are they English language learners,
right,
or is this intermediate, third-year university economics, or
right,
is this, introductory economics, or is it so very much the level of the student? And there's a lot of things that you have to take into account for that.
Yes.
But then that's really just gets into becoming familiar with language use and language, like word choice and sentence structure, but also tone. Like first year introductory texts tend to be a little more conversational, a little more bring the student into this topic. And then, if you ever seen like a intermediate macroeconomics textbook, it's like a brick when you're reading. It's like reading Greek sometimes.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be. Like, it just depends. So definitely leveled writing is probably...
That's a great example, and I think really relevant to students and aspiring professionals in any number of fields, because fundamentally they're going to be communicating from a position of knowledge and expertise, in many cases to an audience who doesn't have that expertise, who's paying them for that expertise, right? Whether you're in the field of software or in the trades, your value in that commercial relationship is knowing the things and trying to explain why you're doing what you're doing, or trying to recommend one approach or material over another. And the challenge for a lot of people is to communicate that expertise in a way that is clear to an audience that isn't expert.
And that it's actually a very difficult thing to do.
It really is.
It really is. That's why editors are important.
And that marks the end of another episode of Reading and Writing Between the Lines, a podcast hosted by me, John Witzman, on behalf of the Communications Department and School of Interdisciplinary Studies at Conestoga College. You can find other episodes of this series on our YouTube channel, Reading and Writing Between the Lines. Stay tuned for more episodes. Thanks for listening.